welcome back to another Ursa Minor episode. Last time we left off, we had just escaped the clutches of the underground. And now it's sunset here in the swamp, which we ever so want to do. But, let's first get rid of some of this treeage. Now that I am here. I only really need the trees off the land. The ones in the water are pretty cool, and I'll keep those there. But the ones on the mainland have to go. They're rotten to the core. So I believe to start off, ultimately, I'm going to need some sort of house. So first off, let's make this land flat by being awesome with that. And I think I see a skeleton all over there. That thing has an enchanted bow. Anyway, grab this apple. Now, netherrack sucks. Nobody likes you. You're like the old dude that came back to college. Nobody likes you. Actually, I think an old dude going back to college would be pretty cool. You know, has experience. Come back to college. He wants to get ahead in life. I'd say it'd be the old dude who wants to go back to high school. Is the guy that nobody likes. Yeah. If you can't even complete high school, what good are you? Hey? Hey? That's how high school is nowadays. You know, it's really impossible to not get a diploma. But that's just my opinion. Anyway, let's grab... Oh, that is so good. That is so good. Was it good for you? Because it's so good for me. Oh, I like this. And it's going to be a nice little tunnel here we're going to have. Basically, laboratory was the thing I chose that I was going to make on this this little trip here, and from what I can tell, it's going to be pretty easy going about with this because I don't got to do any digging. Digging is off the table, but I do got to do some replacements. I'm thinking the base is going to be made out of oak wood, and from there, I'm not sure what I'm going to make the walls out of because it's a laboratory. I said a laboratory, but when you think about it in Minecraft, it's really just an advanced witch's hut. And an advanced witch's hut would probably still be made out of wood in Minecraft, mainly due to the fact that we don't have access to the creative mode, which means I'd be able to make the whole thing out of iron blocks, which I can't. So, instead of trying to do the impossible, I'll try and do the possible. These dogs don't know. Say hello, dog! They're not going to say hello. They're outside the door. Anyway, as far as the walls currently go, I have no plan. And I'll look over a few of the creative things that I could do with it. But I'm not promising, like, it's going to be made entirely out of iron bars or anything. What I will promise is that it'll look aesthetically awesome. So there you go. That's my promises. And it's not going to be as big a deal as the freaking... what is it? As big of a deal as the Citadel is, because it's just going to be, you know, a place I can live. You know, not a shack like I have out by the Citadel. So what I want to see is dimensions. How am I going to do this? I don't want it to be squares. Square is bland. But I don't want it to be, you know, ginormous. So what I'm going to do is probably count 2 in from the sides. And I'll make it out of that, eh? Eh? No, we'll count 1 in. You know, just enough so the water doesn't get in. Kind of like that, you know? But, I'm gonna have to go grab my crafting bench again, so I can craft a shovel. Shovels are good. And once I get this all set up, I can set up an underground pathing on that island over to our nether portal down here. Nope. Up, 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 up. Don't drown. That would be bad for your health. Come to think, man, last time drowning was good for your health. I think it was Final Fantasy X. That's right. Drown, Tidus, drown. Anyway, crafting table. And we'll head back up. Although I do have to admit, Blitzball was kind of the coolest thing in the new Final Fantasies. You know, stuff that was showing up on the newer systems. It's not even the PS3. Personally, I loathe Final Fantasy 13 to the point where I'm just like, ugh, I don't like it at all. It has its merits. It's okay, but I'm not too much of a fan of that. Because, you know what? I grew up on the teat of, you know, good Final Fantasies. Back on the 2D platforms, Final Fantasy was the thing. And we all were like, yes, Final Fantasy, it's so awesome. And you look at the good to bad ratio Final Fantasies back then, it was so much more towards the good side. Because Final Fantasy 1 was pretty damn cool. I mean, it started off the whole franchise. Of course it's going to be cool. I mean, compared to things now, it's probably still better than Final Fantasy 13. I'll give it that. But, as far as everything goes, I don't think anything could compare to Final Fantasies of the 2D back then. You look at it, Final Fantasy 2, okay, I think out of all the old 2D ones, Final Fantasy 2 was probably the worst out of all of them, and it was still the best. It's still better than most of the ones I see nowadays. So, that leaves, you know, the high points, the really high points back in the 2D ones, and that was Final Fantasy 3, which I'm sure a lot of people like. Final Fantasy IV, which was the first Super Nintendo one, and that was the one I grew up on, and it was just amazing, because I could pretty much sit here and tell you how to beat the game from beginning to end if you gave me a little time to think in between. That's just how much I played it. And you know what? I said I was going to craft a shovel, and I didn't, so let me get right to that. Freaking out now. Alright. It's a fantastic shovel. Anyway. Final Fantasy, right. Final Fantasy V. A lot of people are like, oh, well, Final Fantasy V is, you know, cool. I admit, it was pretty damn cool. I like X-Death as a villain and everything. I like the job system that they had first introduced in 5, which was, well, not first introduced in 5, they introduced it in 3, but they really perfected it with 5. And, you know, the only problem I have with it, because Final Fantasy VI is my favorite Final Fantasy of them all, the only problem I have with 5 is the fact that I can't really be attached to the characters there. Mainly because, and spoiler alert for anybody who has not played it, the character that I even came close to liking didn't make it all the way to the end. To be as vague as possible. And to those who did play it, they know exactly who I'm talking about. And he was the only character that I could really be like, hey, I like you. But he didn't give me enough time with him to really say, like, hey, I like you. So that's my major problem with Final Fantasy V. Final Fantasy VI has all the same things Final Fantasy V does as far as story and character development goes, and, you know, even slightly better, because I can actually care about those characters. I can actually say, I like this character. For instance, there are like 3 girls in your party in Final Fantasy V. Bart's is a pimp. But, and I say but, I like Terra over all 3 of those combined. So eat that, Final Fantasy V. And as far as villains go, well, I've heard some debate, you know, if we're just talking about 2D villains, because I don't want to get into the Kefka versus Sephiroth war. If we're talking about 2D villains, and we're talking about X-Death versus Kefka, I still think Kefka wins, just because, number one, even though X-Death basically did the same thing as Kefka, he sent everything to the void, and then he couldn't control his power. And that's the deal breaker for me. If you are going to be this almighty being, please be able to control your power, because I don't want to feel like I'm fighting a dork that doesn't know how to, you know, effectively control what his entire ambition was supposed to be. As for Kefka, he knew his plans right from the beginning, and he knew exactly what he was doing, and he knew how to get it, and when he got it, he knew how to use it. It was just good, you know? Good villains know exactly what they're doing. And it really felt like in the final battle that you were all like, well, if I don't do this, he knows how to use his power, and it's not going to be some inhuman thing that's going to destroy the world. So instead, it doesn't feel like an alien presence is trying to kill you or anything. It's like an actual human. More like a human that has magical powers and has a clown face, but still, it has human qualities. You know, the qualities that say we don't deserve to live, yada yada yada. I've been talking through the whole Minecraft day about Final Fantasy, and I could continue on, but I probably won't. Well, I probably will, because I got one more thing. To those that are butthurt over me saying Final Fantasy 13 sucks, I will give it one thing that I entirely appreciate from it. And that's the only character I gave 2 craps about, because that character to me was the only character that really developed over time. And instead of falling into the cliche stereotypes. And there were so many cliche stereotypes he could have ruined. And the person I'm talking about is Saz. Saz is pretty damn cool. And here's the main thing I really like about him. He's a black guy in a game that doesn't act black. You know, it sounds racist, but, you know, I'm not a racist person. I don't judge people by their color of the skin or anything, but I judge people by how close to the stereotype they're being. You know, if you don't want me to call you something, then stop being it. But, Saz really fell out of that whole, I'm a black guy in video games, so I'm like uber footballer that knows how to talk gangsta. No, Saz was a person, and you could feel it. And his whole side story with Dodge and everything, I liked it. It was something that was like, oh, this is fantastic. This is what Final Fantasy should be. You know? Not these J-pop bullcrap that I don't really give a crap about. There we go. But enough about that. You know, I just want to appreciate Saz for being Saz. He was damn cool. He used pistols, and one of my favorite things about him is he acted like the rest of us should in situations like that. I hate it when people are all like, well, I was a military person with no parents, so I'm like, oh, this shit's all old to me, and you should get a pair of balls because I'm also a girl. Because that's my girl voice. But, overall, I like Saws because he wasn't the courageous character. He wasn't the person that was like, oh, I'm gonna take on the whole world because my sister's all crystalled up. He had fear in him. He knew exactly what he was getting into. He was us. He was the most relatable character out of any of them because he wasn't a stereotype. And I appreciate that. And when I say appreciate, I really mean I really appreciate that. And it's something that Final Fantasy has lacked for many, many years. So, looks like we're out of time again. So, I'll see you all next time. And keep my words in mind when I say I appreciate Saws. Later!